This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Welcome to Fruitloops, Buiti Binafi, and Bienvenidos Bitches. Thank you so much for listening. Fruitloops is a true crime, history, and comedy podcast that delves into the often overlooked stories of serial killers of color and, more importantly, the victims. We take deep dives into the lives and crimes of these killers worldwide, while also examining the history, culture, and social factors that may have influenced their actions. And the reason that we cover these crimes is because they often go unnoticed by the public. And why is that? Because in the simplest of terms, the news is racist. Allegedly.
And we are Wendy and Beth. She's Wendy, a Black Latinx woman, and I'm Beth, and I just happen to be white. That's just a little piece of who we are. Another piece is that although we are both fascinated by true crime, really fascinated by true crime, and we know a lot about it, keep in mind that we are not journalists, investigators, or psychologists, and the opinions expressed in this podcast are just that, our opinions.
So, Beth, remind me who we're talking about.
Today we're talking about Mark Goudeau, the baseline killer who murdered 9 people in the Phoenix area between 2005 and 2006.
So now we're going to get into some stats. All right. Mark G. Had 9 murders. I only put G because I forgot how to spell his name in the script. So Mark Goudeau had 9 murder victims. Speak their names. Georgia Thompson was 19. Tina Washington was 39. Romelia Vargas was 38. Mirna Palma Roman was 34. Liliana Sanchez Cabrera was 20. George Chow Chu was 23. Kristen Nicole Gibbons was 26. Sofia Nunez was 37. And Carmen Miranda was 37. His crimes took place from August 6, 2005 to June 29th, 2006. He was apprehended on September 4th, 2006. He ended up being convicted of 67 felony counts. We'll tell you all the details, including 9 murders, attempted murder, sexual assault, child molestation, and kidnapping. And he was sentenced to 1,200 years for the rapes and several death sentences. And he is currently on death row.
All right.
So now we're going to dive into the setting. So let me tell you something. My offspring is in the 3rd grade and learning about the first peoples of Arizona. So I use this school book for this section. Spoiler alert, Phoenix is on land previously inhabited entirely by brown folks, specifically by indigenous people. Oh, yes. And by 2005 and 6, it was inhabited by mostly white folks. How did that happen? The history history of Phoenix is long and has been severely whitewashed. But here's the Fruit Loops Cliffs Notes.
The Hohokam were the first peoples of Arizona. They also carried out extensive trade with the nearby ancient Puebloans, the Mogollon, and the Sinawa, as well as with the more distant Mesoamerican civilizations. The Hohokam people occupied the Phoenix area for 2,000 years.
That's right. Minding their business.
Yep.
After the departure of the Hohokam, and nobody knows exactly what happened to them, the word Hohokam is said to be Pima for those who have vanished. Groups of the Akmiel Odom, commonly known as Pima, Tohono O'odham, and Maricopa tribes began to use the area, as well as segments of the Yavapai and Apache. They banded with the Maricopa for protection against incursions by the Yuma and Apache tribes.
After the Mexican-American War ended in 1848, Mexico ceded its northern zone to the United States, and the region's residents became U.S. citizens. Phoenix was settled in 1867 as an agricultural community near where the Salt and Gila rivers met, and it was incorporated as a city in 1881.
Although it is located in the northeastern part of the Sonora Desert and has a hot desert climate, I'll say, it was 108 today, its extensive canal system led to a thriving agricultural community. The canal system was utilized by the Hohokam, and I believe they started it, right?
Yes.
And hundreds of years after the Hohokam vanished, European settlers started excavating the ancient waterways they noticed. Thank you for shortening this, because I almost didn't put this part in.
I think it's really fascinating.
It is really interesting.
Yeah.
But it was really long. Anyway, thank you.
Cumbersome.
Yes. Today, the Phoenix metro area has more than 180 miles of canals and more miles of waterways than Venice and Amsterdam combined. I don't think people know that, but
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I used to run. Now I just walk on my 36-year-old knees. Never forgave me for it, but it's a lot of people take advantage of the canal and walk and fish and run and walk the dogs along the canals. It's really cool.
Yep, it is. In 1863, the mining town of Wickenburg, northwest of Phoenix, was the first to be established in Maricopa County. And spoiler alert, there are lots of mining towns in Arizona. These were the western boom and bust towns back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
The Army created Fort McDowell on the Verde River in 1865 to forestall Indian uprisings. And uprisings, or trying to get their stolen land back, tomato.
Yeah. Whatever your history book wants to call it, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, very whitewashed. The fort established a camp on the south side of the Salt River in 1866, which was the first settlement in the valley after the decline of the Hohokam. Other nearby settlements later merged to become the city of Tempe, and on February 14th, 1912...
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, look at that. Phoenix became the state capital as Arizona was admitted to the Union as the 48th state under President William Howard Taft. I only thought that this was really, really interesting because we're in an election year. There's this Supreme Court stuff, and people are talking about court packing and adding states. And people used to do it all the time. So
back in the day,
what's the big deal? Anyway.
Phoenix is a quintessential Western city, sprawling across the valley with wide roads and big skies. Maricopa County, where Phoenix is located, encompasses 14 cities, 10 towns, 15 unincorporated communities, and 4 Native American communities. Each city or town in the valley tends to blend straight into the next.
True. Phoenix was a planned city built on a grid as opposed to a lot of eastern cities that just kind of grew haphazardly. And most of the major streets are a mile apart. The streets, for the most part, run east and west and north and south. Baseline Road, which is, we'll call it a character in the story, is located in South Phoenix and runs east to west, stretching all the way out to Apache Junction, which is on the far east side of the valley.
In architecture, it's similar to other southwestern towns with Spanish and Pueblo influences, like Albuquerque and Los Angeles. There's lots of stucco and red tile roofs. But Phoenix has been pretty whitewashed in that it's fairly bland.
Mm-hmm.
With so much Native American history, you'd think you'd see a lot more evidence of it. But But much of the Phoenix area or the Valley of the Sun is just suburban neighborhoods and strip malls.
Again, a place entirely inhabited by brown indigenous people, and now not so much.
White.
White,
Yes.
very lots of whites. But
Yes.
you can look for Native American history if you want to. That's true. There's the Heard Museum in Uptown Phoenix, which is a museum dedicated to Native American art, and the Pueblo Grande Museum, a pre-Columbian site that was inhabited by the Hohokam people, smack dab in the middle of Phoenix at Washington and 44th Street.
There's also the Hohokam Heritage Center in Chandler, a museum for the Gila River Indian community. And outside of the Phoenix area is the Casa Grande Ruins, Montezuma Castle, Tootsie Goot National Monument, among other sites. But you really need to seek these things out. The modern face of Phoenix, as we said, is very, very white.
So much snow, except it's in the desert, and it's the people. South Phoenix. South Phoenix, where Baseline Road runs through, is known as the bad part of town, and I think only white people say that. I live in South Phoenix, and look, I'm not scared of you. I'm from the South Side, and I tell that to my kids, and they are hard as hell. But it's the quote unquote bad part of town, whatever. But people just say that because there's more poverty and more black and brown people here. But there are actually pockets of poverty all over this entire city. In fact, some of the Baseline Killers crimes took place in a square mile between 32nd Street and 24th Street and Indian School and Thomas Road, an area about 7 miles north of Baseline Road. It's a poorer area, but just a mile or so north of that is Camelback, and that is a very fancy, upscale, white area called the Biltmore Fashion Park and the Arizona Biltmore Resort and the Wrigley Mansion, which are super duper posh. Like my black ass does not like going there. When people say, let's meet at the Biltmore, I'm like, let's not.
No thanks. Yeah.
Unless somebody else is paying.
I can't stand the Biltmore Fashion Park.
I hate going there.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because there are pockets of poverty all over the city. Mm-hmm. So you can drive from one area that's really posh right into another area that's there's a lot of poverty. Mm-hmm. So anyway, in Phoenix in 2006 was the 6th largest city in America, and it was growing fast. Currently, it's the 5th largest city in the U.S. According to the census in 2010, Maricopa County, which is named after the Maricopa people, was comprised of 73% white people, 5% black people, 2% Native American, and the rest of other races, including 2 or more races. And 29% were of Latinx origin.
So I'm just looking at that 73%. And again, it started out the complete opposite.
Yes.
Let's see how long we can keep this charade going. In 2006, Mike D'Antoni was the coach of the Phoenix Suns. Remember those days? That summer was very hot and terrifying because there were actually 2 active serial cases going on in Phoenix at the same time. The Valley of the Sun was the Valley of the Shooketh. And Beth was here for all of it, right, Beth?
Yep, I was.
So now we're going to get into Mark Goudeau, the Baseline Killer's early life. Hit it, Beth.
So Mark Goudeau was born September 6, 1964, and he was the 12th of 13 children. His mother was a maid, and his father was a lot attendant for car dealers and a bit of a philanderer. Mark's father was also a strict disciplinarian, and drug use and alcoholism ran in the family. Some siblings grew up to be upstanding citizens, and others have been convicted of different crimes.
Mark's parents split up, and then his mother died when he was just 12 years old. He lived with his sister for a while and attended high school at Corona del Sol, in Tempe, where he excelled in sports and played football. But eventually he left school and reportedly turned to alcohol and cocaine, and he never graduated.
At 18, he was accused of rape, but was never charged. In 1982, a female high school student made the allegation that Mark and his older brother, Michael, had raped her repeatedly at their home. The police report notes that the young woman, quote, would not cooperate, unquote, for a possible prosecution and soon left the Phoenix area. And when they say she would not cooperate, I think what they meant was she didn't want to deal with their bullshit.
Yeah, no. I guess the way we handle sexual assaults has evolved and gotten a little bit better. But in 1982, you can bet your bottom dollar it was complete garbage.
Shitty.
Yeah. So it's not.
That's
surprising.
my guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your whole vagina is on trial. Your vagina's history is on trial. What your vagina was wearing is on trial. Like all the things that shouldn't matter are on trial. It's ridiculous. Yep. Whoa, how unprofessional. I should have put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Goudeau then had a couple of minor arrests while like trespassing and driving while intoxicated, but nothing major. When he was 24, Goudeau met a woman named Wendy Carr. Can you hear those church bells? At a Phoenix nightclub. They began a serious relationship and moved in together. Serious. Goudeau and Carr shared an apartment on 28th Street in Osborne in the summer of 1989.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Hellmann's believes they can turn any mayo hater into a lover. So, if you know someone who thinks mayo equals bland, show their taste buds the truth and challenge them to try Hellmann's flavored mayo. With irresistible flavors like Hellmann's spicy mayo, garlic aioli, chipotle, and Italian herb, they'll be eating their words. Challenge haters to try Hellmann's flavored mayo and get them to eat their words. Learn more at hellmanns.com/eatyourwords.
Now we're going to dive into the timeline. Take us there, Beth.
On August 6, 1989, Phoenix police responded to calls of a man beating a woman with the butt of a shotgun in the parking lot of the apartment complex where Mark and Wendy lived.
Officers found the semi-conscious woman named Darlene bleeding from her head and naked from the waist down. Two witnesses said the assailant had chased them while brandishing the shotgun and a revolver before fleeing. That's a lot of weapons.
Yeah. Darlene had a skull fracture, deep lacerations, and bruises all over her body. She actually wasn't even able to give a statement for 3 days because she was hospitalized. But when she was able to, she gave police a complete account of what happened, accusing Mark Goudeau by name. She was even able to give them his address.
Shout out to Darlene. After the police arrested Goudeau, he gave numerous bullshit accounts of what happened, including at first how he and the woman had consensual sex and were about to take a bath when the unknown two men, one of them armed with an Uzi, a submachine gun, entered the apartment and beat her up before leaving.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I hate when that happens.
Yeah. It just reminds me, there's this skit on SNL and Keenan is like pretending he's trying to do the scared straight, but all he's doing is delivering plots from scary movies to the kids to try to get them scared straight. That's what this reminds me of.
Yeah. In the police report is a quote from Goudeau where he says that he, quote, tries to avoid women like her, unquote. And at trial, Darlene said that she, quote, felt like she was in the room with the devil. And she was. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark's girlfriend, Wendy Carr, wrote a letter to the judge. Now, this is coming from a white lady, so it carries a lot of weight. Did we say that Wendy Carr was a white lady? Because she is.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, she did. She is.
And welcome to Culture Corner. There is, I don't know if this might be taboo to say out loud, but Mark Goudeau was a black man. Wendy Carr was a white woman. And there is some conversation in the black zeitgeist about a white woman being a prize for a black man, as if he might be elevating himself by being with her. I only bring that up. This is not my perspective. This is just something that many people are saying. So I just wanted to bring that up. She's white, he's black. Anyway, so there you go. But she wrote a letter to the judge saying, "No one can ever convince me that Mark is capable of assaulting anyone. I am confident when I say that Mark has never done drugs of any fashion. He is of high morals and sound mind, and if the true assailant is not incarcerated, I'm sure he'll do this again. He's probably done it before." Also, I should also remind people, I am married to an old whitey. I have nothing against interracial relationships.
Yeah,
I just say that as a fact of the story and what people say. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't kill me. Don't get at me.
No, I don't think it's bad to point out what people say in culture and society.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goudeau was convicted of aggravated assault, but was out on bond prior to sentencing. And on August 10th, 1990, just weeks before his sentencing, Mark Goudeau robbed a Fry's supermarket.
Well, here's what he did. He held up 2 female store clerks with a silver handgun, not unlike the weapon described much later by his victim. He pointed out the gun at the head of one of the women and told them to come with him if you know what's good for you.
The women did as they were told, leaving the store briefly with him. He also took about $500 in a brown paper bag. Goudeau took off in his car, leaving the women behind, but passerby alerted police to the make, model, and license plate of the vehicle, and investigators tracked him down and arrested him.
Goodness. Goudeau denied everything, even though police found the brown paper bag with the Fry's money in it in his apartment.
I didn't do it.
He is not a good liar or story fabricator. And remember, Goudeau was still facing sentencing for the assault of Darlene. In a plea bargain deal, Goudeau had admitted to 3 counts of aggravated assault. So for that and for having robbed a store, he was sentenced to 21 years.
Shortly before his January 1991 sentencing on the Fry's robbery, Goudeau told the pre-sentencing officer that he had smoked crack cocaine before the robbery and that the next thing he knew, he was at the store with a gun.
Crack is a hell of a drug.
And he claimed that the gun was not real. He also claimed that he was tired of lying and that he realized that he had a drug problem and needed help. But remember, according to Wendy Carr, he never did drugs.
Okay?
Never.
Right.
Never done drugs of any fashion. And he's of high morals and sound mind.
And a sound mind. He began serving his sentence in 1991. Wendy stood by his side. Stand by your man. And that same year, the two were married in prison. Sounds romantic. Goudeau continued to blame drugs and alcohol for his legal troubles.
Goudeau was up for parole in 2004. He had the support of Wendy, his friends, and relatives who vouched for him to the parole board. Goudeau said he was out of control due to drug and alcohol abuse, but that he never wanted to hurt a soul.
He was doing drugs, but he never meant to hurt a soul. In August of 2004, just after 13 years, Goudeau was released on parole. He was 39 at the time. He found a job as a construction worker where he often worked 10-hour days. During his first month on the job, he was awarded Employee of the Month. He was known as a friendly neighbor and loving husband.
In May of 2005, a series of random drive-by shootings began across the valley. The serial shooter attacked at night and early in the morning using a rifle or a shotgun and preyed on individuals who were walking alone or waiting at deserted bus stops. Animals were killed as well, most notably horses and dogs.
Just, ugh. Those guys
Yeah.
are disgusting. But then in August of 2005, a string of sexual assaults started along Baseline Road, but they were not immediately connected. On August 6th, 2005, in South Phoenix, 3 girls were walking home from a pool party when a man forced them behind a church. They were held at gunpoint as the man molested 2 of the girls.
On September 8th, 2005, Georgia Thompson was shot to death in an apartment complex parking lot in Tempe, a little over a mile from Baseline Road. She had just exited her car after an evening out that included dinner with her boyfriend and his parents. She was found with a bullet in her head and her keys still clutched in her hand.
Her pants were unbuttoned, but she had not been sexually assaulted. And this seems to be a signature of Goudeau's. The only evidence found at the scene was a spent .380 caliber cartridge casing. While investigating, a Tempe detective had tracked down the location of a cell tower where Thompson's missing phone had pinged an hour after the murder. The tower was in central Phoenix, about 200 yards from Mark Goudeau's home.
On September 20th, 2005, 2 sisters were walking near a park in South Phoenix when they were accosted and sexually assaulted. The 2 sisters, one visibly pregnant, were forced to strip. Their attacker pointed a gun at the pregnant sister's belly, molested her, then raped her sister. He forced the older girl, the one who was pregnant, and she was 6 months pregnant, to spit into his hand, and he wiped it on an area of her breast, then rubbed dirt into it, presumably in an attempt to get rid of his own DNA.
Now, I know DNA. It is my favorite character in every story, and that is not how she works. On September 28th, 2005, at about 9:30 p.m., a mother and her teenage daughter were abducted in the car outside of a Mexican restaurant, then driven to a secluded area nearby. The mother was sexually assaulted in front of her daughter, then forced to drive while the daughter was molested by Goudeau.
On November 3rd, 2005, about 8 p.m., a man in a dreadlock wig and wearing a fisherman's hat robbed a lingerie boutique at gunpoint. Immediately afterward, he forced a young woman at gunpoint to drive him out of the area. She was dropping off clothes into a donation bin when he grabbed her. The woman went along with his sexual demands, and she lived.
A composite sketch was made depicting a round-faced black man with a thin mustache, locks. We don't say dreadlocks anymore because it's racist.
Oh, really?
Because it implies that the hair on your natural head is dreadful, and it's a word that Europeans used.
I had no idea.
To mock the way that black people styled their natural hair, and we try not to use it anymore. This has been Culture Corner with Wendy and Beth.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So I try not to use it, but you slip up every now and then. You just do better next time. And a floppy hat. The image appeared all over the media and on billboards around Phoenix.
On November 7th, 2005, at about 8 p.m., 4 people were robbed at gunpoint inside Las Brazos, a Mexican restaurant located at 32nd Street and Thomas. The robber then went next door to a Little Caesars pizza restaurant and robbed 3 people inside. Immediately afterward, he robbed 4 people outside on the street. He reportedly stole $463 and fired a round into the air as he fled. This is a crazy crime.
This is some spree. You know what's coming back is that Shop Till You Drop show? Or
is
like a
really?
shopper sweepstakes, where people are in grocery stores and try to shop
as much as they can.
This is like the robbery sweepstakes where you're like going through your shop, rob till you drop. That's what this feels like. It's so
crazy,
intense, and out of the there's cameras and confetti. Yeah, exactly. But except there's not. Goudeau was dubbed the baseline rapist after Phoenix police realized that a man was sexually assaulting females as young as 12 years old at gunpoint near Baseline Road. But he evolved into being the baseline killer in the spring of 2006 after investigators began to link the series of murders and armed robberies to the rapist.
On December 12th, 2005, Tina Washington left work at a daycare center in South Phoenix and walked across the street to take the bus home. She was dragged into an alley behind a gas station and sandwich shop. She was shot in the head, and she also had a defensive gunshot wound to her hand. Her bra was visible and her pants were pulled down a bit.
I just got to say that the manner in which he left some of these women's bodies is humiliating and super disrespectful.
Yeah.
To have your body exposed, your pants undone, it's just speaks to the kink.
I think it's maybe meant to humiliate them.
Yeah, it just seems really messed up. And I don't know what Wendy is thinking about calling her husband this upstanding citizen when he is clearly the opposite. So the woman, Ms. Washington, didn't have a purse or any identification, but a shopping bag with a holiday motif was near the body. Police learned later that the victim had received the bag at a secret Santa party across the street at a preschool where she worked. And just thinking of how sad the kids in that class must have been when they found the news.
Very
Tina
sad.
owned a distinctive mother's ring that her children bought for her, and it was missing.
A man named Pete Ochoa was working at his catering business inside one of the buildings when he heard two bangs. He opened the door and looked out. He thought the noise was coming from some neighborhood kids playing football, which had happened before. He was going out to tell them to leave, but he instead saw a man in a hooded sweatshirt standing over a woman's motionless body.
The man stood up, pointed a handgun at Ochoa, and fired once from a distance of about 10 feet. But the gun jammed. Ochoa went back into the warehouse and closed and latched the door. He said that a moment or two later, he saw the door handle turn, that the man was trying to get inside, but the lock held, thank goodness. Ochoa said he wished he could be more of help in identifying the assailant.
Tina Washington's sister claimed that Tina had told her that she had been harassed on the bus by a man the day before. She believed that the man was her sister's murderer. And it wasn't until months later that ballistics eventually linked the murder of Georgia Thompson with Tina Washington and the other murders and robberies in Phoenix.
In the early morning hours of February 20th, 2006, Romelia Vargas and Mirna Palma Roman were working in a food catering truck in southwest Phoenix when they were attacked. Romelia and Mirna were found in their truck with gunshot wounds to their heads. Their pants were unbuttoned and pulled down slightly. At first, police thought it was a drug deal gone bad. Of course they would, because it's two brown women in a truck in the neighborhood. But anyway, the drug deal gone bad, but they were later ballistically linked to the other crimes.
On March 14th, 2006, at about 9 p.m., Chao George Cho, 23, offered his coworker Liliana Sanchez Cabrera, 20, a ride home after their shift at a restaurant. But they were abducted in the parking lot as they were leaving.
George's body was found in an alley off 32nd Street, and Liliana was found dead in the car a few blocks west of 24th Street. It was at this point the police realized that this was the work of a serial killer.
On April 4th, 2006, a body was found hidden beneath a pile of plywood between a pool service office and a storage unit. She was later identified as Kristen Nicole Gibbons, 26, a sex worker. The owner of the pool service had noticed blood and drag marks in the gravel outside of his office on March 29th and had called police.
The police did not find anything. Instead, the owner's dog found the body a week later. Kristen had been shot in the head, and ballistics later linked her murder to the other baseline murders. Kristen was probably murdered on March 28th or 29th.
On April 10th, 2006, Sofia Nunez, 37, was found dead in her bathtub by her 8-year-old son. That's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
She was submerged in the water. Her shirt was pulled up and her pants unbuttoned. She had been shot in the head. Goudeau and Nunez had a casual relationship, and she had the suspicion that he might be married.
I think he also tried to tell her that he was a professional athlete.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes, like a pro football player or something.
Yeah, she didn't believe him, but her murder wasn't immediately connected because the MO was very different from the other murders. First, she was killed in her home, whereas the other murder victims had been abducted off the streets or killed in their cars. And it was also outside of the area area where he usually operated. She lived in West Phoenix, and most of the other crimes were clustered around Central Phoenix.
Police found her phone number in Goudeau's cell phone records. He had called her more than 300 times between March and October 2005. Later, the bullet from Nunez's body was analyzed and it matched the other baseline killer's victims. And DNA from the crime scene was later matched to Goudeau's.
Got him. On May 1st, 2006, around 9 p.m., a man wearing a beige latex human-like mask carjacked a woman. The woman had just left a check cashing place in the strip mall where months earlier, Goudeau had committed the back-to-back armed robberies at the Mexican restaurant and pizza joint.
That would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Some guy comes up to you in a latex mask.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. The man was posing as an unhoused person pushing a shopping cart. He forced the woman at gunpoint to drive a few miles north to a residential area. He told her that he had just robbed the Fry's store, and it was the same Fry's store that he had actually robbed years earlier. But it was a lie this time.
Yeah.
I don't understand the lie either.
I think that's one of my takeaways that I don't need to talk about later, because his stories and lies are just so off the wall, don't make any sense ever. Then he made her disrobe, still seated in the car. He asked her to touch herself. At that point, she realized that it was going to be a rape. He said, "Suck my dick." And he was going to kill her if she didn't. And she said, "Go ahead and kill me." That's pretty gangster.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. She gets all the hip hop air horns.
He told her that he was going to blow her brains out in the car and that her parents were going to read about it in the newspaper the next day. That's cold-blooded.
Mm-hmm.
He then pulled the trigger and there was a loud clink noise. When she realized that she wasn't dead, she got out of the car and ran.
Yeah, she's the hero. That's what that deserves.
Yeah.
On May 5th, 2006, Phoenix police went public with a list of 18 crimes that they believed were the work of the baseline killer. And in June of 2006, they had confirmation that those crimes were linked.
Phoenix PD is part of a nationwide network with access to data about shell casings recovered at crime scenes and elsewhere. The network, called NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, enables ballistics experts to compare spent casings by computer and to possibly link crime scenes.
Which is what happened in early June of 2006 when it was discovered that the shell casings from the Washington murder matched those found at the scene of Georgia Thompson's September 2005 death in Tempe. That told police that the suspect had killed at least once before Tina Washington.
On June 29th, 2006 at 9:30 p.m., Carmen Miranda, 37, mother of two, was abducted from a self-serve car wash just blocks from where Goudeau lived. He approached Carmen as she was about to vacuum her car. Carmen and her boyfriend were talking on their cell phones, and the boyfriend heard her scream over the phone. Goudeau overpowered her, took the wheel of her car, and parked a few hundred yards away behind a barbershop.
There, he shot her once in the forehead, leaving her body sprawled in the back seat. Though police arrived in minutes, she was dead and he was nowhere to be seen. She was Goudeau's last known victim. A security camera at the location captured the carjacking on video, but the tape recording was really grainy and degraded for the killer to be made out.
And we watched that video, and although you can't really tell who it is, my takeaway was that it just happened really, really fast.
It was a flash of lightning. Boom,
faster than you can imagine. Yeah.
Now at Chipotle, our all-new Chipotle Honey Chicken brings Chipotle heat with a touch of sweet. Seared smoked peppers and savory Mexican spices, blended with a hint of pure honey for a perfectly balanced sauce. All combined with fresh, tender chicken hot off the grill, served up in your favorite burrito or bowl. New Chipotle Honey Chicken takes heat and sweet to a whole new level. But it's only at Chipotle for a limited time. Order now in the app for pickup or delivery. Chipotle, for real.
As we mentioned earlier, in 2005 and 2006, there was another serial killer active at the same time as the baseline killer. Actually, there were two, though they didn't know it at the time. It was two friends who would go out and drive around the valley, shooting random people and animals, like you do.
Mm-hmm. As one does.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys were nuts. These two were referred to as, at first, as the serial shooter until the case was cracked and it was realized that there were two wackos, at which time the moniker was pluralized to the serial shooters. There did not appear to be a sexual-based motive. The baseline killer, on the other hand, was known to be use a semi-automatic gun and was active at night, but also during the day. He also committed robberies and had a sexual-based motive.
The MOs and signatures were different. An MO is what the killer does in order to commit the crime, like the type of gun he uses, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A signature is what he needs to do to get something out of it, to get his rocks off, so to speak. And police determined that these were three, actually, different killers, while most of the general public was probably unaware of the difference. And a lot of people thought it was one serial killer.
Doing all of the crime.
All of it, yeah.
That would have been something, though, if it was.
It was something.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. So now we're going to get into the investigation and the arrest. Police released composite sketches of the baseline killer. Goudeau's parole officer recognized him in the sketch and called the Phoenix Police Silent Witness Hotline, referring to Mark Goudeau, suggesting that his client resembled one of the composite sketches of the suspect. It was the first time Goudeau's name had come up in the investigation.
On July 21st, 2006, a Phoenix detective and Goudeau's parole officer knocked on his door. Later, the detective described a pleasant chat with the ex-con, who volunteered to provide any requested DNA or fingerprint samples, probably because he thought he covered his tracks.
Right.
And Goudeau says that he cooperated fully when he was questioned by police, that he had nothing to hide.
Interesting. The parole officer looked around for the Goudeau residence a little during the half-hour interview, but didn't notice anything unusual in plain view. By that point in the investigation, hundreds of African-American men resembling the sketch had been added to the growing list of potential suspects. Goudeau was an ex-convict on parole who lived near several of the crime scenes. He says he wasn't surprised when he was contacted by the police.
9 of the 23 baseline killer attacks occurred within 3 miles of the Phoenix home Goudeau and his wife shared. One of the victims, 37-year-old Carmen Miranda, was killed just around the corner from their residence. And I remember when that murder happened because I worked right down the street from where the baseline killer lived. And there seemed at the time to be a cluster of crimes occurring within a square mile block. So at the time, I was pretty sure that he lived around there because I had read that serial killers will start out further away from their residence, but then will start operating closer and closer to where they live, like they get lazy or comfortable or something like that.
Oh, gee, a true crime knew something was up. She was sniffing
it out
on the case.
Yeah, it was a little freaky because, I had to go to work.
Yeah. This was no doubt a very scary time to be in Phoenix, because you never knew things were happening at night. Things were happening during the day.
Yeah, and they were happening when you're walking down the street. Somebody might drive by and shoot you.
Yeah, and it was happening to dogs and horses, people of different races, men and women. It was like nobody was safe.
Yeah.
The Goudeau's home was searched, but nothing incriminating was discovered. Still, because of his criminal past and the proximity of his home to the baseline killer's crimes, he was placed under surveillance.
For the next several weeks, police monitored his every move, following him to work, his weekly appointments with his parole officer, and on errands with his wife. During that time, no criminal behavior was reported, so task force supervisors decided to call off the surveillance of Goudeau, but they didn't forget him.
But he knew they were watching him, right? So
Yeah.
he was on his best.
He wasn't going to do anything.
Yeah, his bestest behavior. 1 month later in August, Phoenix police made the decision to gather evidence from the numerous crimes collected throughout the investigation and send it to the Department of Public Safety's forensic lab for DNA testing.
Finally,
it's DNA testing. Among that evidence were 2 swabs taken from one of the first sexual assaults attributed to the baseline killer, the sexual assault of the 2 sisters.
On September 6, 2006, DNA linked Goudeau to the sexual assault of the 2 sisters in September of 2005, 1 year earlier. Goudeau was then arrested within days after an analyst at the state crime lab linked his DNA to swabs collected from the breasts of one of the assaulted sisters, the one that he tried to mask with his own saliva and dirt.
My genius didn't work. But technology is now able to separate male DNA from female DNA using something called STR-DNA. Goudeau's genetic profile had already been in a national databank since 2004 after he provided a DNA swab upon his release from prison after serving 13 years for his earlier crimes.
Now, just imagine if they had tested that DNA
in a world
back in September of 2005. Just imagine. Detectives collected some evidence during their search of Goudeau's home after his arrest for sexual assault. Apparently, Goudeau had a lot of shoes, so detectives focused on just the black and white footwear because that's what was described by his victims. Among the items seized were a pair of white Nike sneakers.
See, this is where the detectives' cultural competence, their lack of it shows, because everybody knows that, like, dudes love sneakers. Dudes tend to be sneakerheads. So the fact that he had a lot is not weird. It's just weird for old white guys.
Yeah.
And so, so they missed the mark. Forensic testing between September and October revealed that DNA from 2 of Goudeau's murder victims had remained on one of his sneakers, despite apparent attempts to wash away possible evidence.
Analysts found a tiny bit of blood from the only male murder victim, George Chu, on the stitching around the Nike swoosh. The other DNA on that sneaker, besides Goudeau's, belonged to Nicole Gibbons, murdered in late March 2006, about 2 weeks after Chu. Police also recovered a black ski mask from the bottom of a hamper, and testing revealed the microscopic presence of Gibbons' blood in 5 locations on it.
Investigators were now convinced that Goudeau was the baseline killer, but prosecutors were not in a rush to seek a grand jury indictment for the 9 murders and other charges because he was already locked up for the rape case of the 2 sisters.
So they can take their time. In October of 2006, while Goudeau was already in custody for the sexual assault, police searched his home again, looking for more evidence. The lead detective on the Baseline Killer Task Force was apparently not happy when he learned that his fellow detectives hadn't taken all of Goudeau's shoes during the first search. And as you might recall, they focused on black and white shoes only because of the earlier interviews with some of the assault and robbery victims and their descriptions of his footwear.
This probably is not what it looked like, but do you know who Jesus and Miro are?
No.
They're 2 guys who started out as podcasters and got a show on Showtime, and they just talk about the culture and talk about news, and they're really, really funny. But now that they're doing their Showtime show from home, one of them has this background that is just all sneakers. This is what I'm picturing Goudeau's sneakers, like a sneaker wall.
Just sneakers everywhere.
Yeah, with colorful sneakers. It probably wasn't like that. But anyway, the evidence discovered on the Nike shoes and the ski cap led police to get another search warrant from a judge and make a second search of Goudeau's home. This time, all of Goudeau's shoes were collected. While collecting the shoes, a detective picked up a pair of brown leather shoes and a small Ziploc sandwich bag containing something metallic slipped from inside the toe of the shoe to the heel.
The detective looked in the bag and saw that it contained a multicolored ring, a bracelet, and a few other trinkets. The detective knew that family members of Tina Washington had reported that her mother's ring and bracelet never turned up after her December 2005 murder. Washington had bought the mother's ring from a Walmart a few months before she died, a special order that included the engraving of the names of her 3 grown sons.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Disguises including the infamous lock wig and the fisherman's hat witnesses had described were never discovered. The murder weapon, a .380 caliber pistol, has also never been found. So now we're going to dive into the trial. Hit it, Beth.
Yeah, it's not going to be a very long section. Goudeau was found guilty of all but 3 armed robberies, 1 attempted robbery, and 1 count of kidnapping. The jury was hung on 1 count of sexual abuse.
Goudeau was handed 9 death sentences plus over 1,100 years in prison. Goudeau has been linked to 23 separate crimes, 74 criminal charges in all, including 15 sexual assaults, 11 kidnappings, and 9 murders. Goudeau has filed many appeals, but so far to no avail. So now we're going to get into where are they now? What do you got, Beth?
Goudeau is locked up in the Arizona State Prison Complex in Florence, Arizona. He still pleads his innocence, saying that the police planted evidence because they didn't find anything until the 3rd search of his home. He also still misunderstands how DNA works, telling a British documentary crew, quote, "Well, they got your DNA, it must be you."
Yeah. His wonderful wife, Wendy, also still claims her husband is innocent. She alleges that Phoenix needed to do some damage control, and Phoenix police planted all of the evidence to frame her husband and grab the glory of solving one of Arizona's biggest criminal cases. And based on our research that we recently did to an exhaustive degree on the Atlanta child murders, I think it's a valid point, as Phoenix was, all about growth at the time, but, and it was just before the housing bubble, but this ain't it, Wendy. She is dead wrong.
Yeah.
So now we're going to...
They got him.
Yeah, they got him. Now we're going to get into what we think made Goudeau snap, as well as our takeaways. So I think his childhood contributed to the adult that he...
Agreed.
Yeah, it was a very unstable childhood. 13 kids is too much. But plus the substance abuse, the strict discipline of his father. And I've also brought this up before, that for Black parents, it's not necessarily unusual to be a strict disciplinarian, especially when you're trying to keep your child safe in a white world. But the loss of his mother and the crime, that rape at an early age that he was accused of, is just beyond. When we spoke to Jensen and Holes about this case, they brought up a really good point that Mark Goudeau's psychological growth may have been stunted when he got locked up, but he clearly wasn't reformed while he was in prison and earned a PhD in criminality. His crimes of robbery, sexual assault escalated to murder. And I got the sense that the murders were like a consequence of his victims not doing what he wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Right. And most serial killers with a sexual element to it strangle or stab. And he didn't do that. Goudeau would talk to his victims first to try to gauge them, and then would try to sexually assault them. And then if he didn't get his way, then he would shoot them. So, but a disgusting individual who deserved to be locked up under the jail.
Agreed. And he was in jail for most of his adult life, and a lot of times because of our prison system, imprisoning people just makes them better criminals. And I too got the feeling that that raping the women is what he was interested in, or being in control. And if they refuse to comply, he'd just get pissed and just kill them. Like he wasn't even interested anymore. Like, you're done, And it's interesting, like we discussed, how he would leave the bodies with their pants pulled down slightly. I'm not really sure what that's all about. Maybe to humiliate them because they refuse to have sex with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
In any case, this guy had no impulse control. He was just doing whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. And I was wondering if maybe there was some sexual abuse in his childhood. The crimes with the two sisters and the mother and the daughter were so awful and strange with the familial relationships. There was like some sort of incest angle there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, we didn't see anything in our research, but that's an interesting thing that you observed, and I'm right there with you. Maybe there was something there.
Could have been. Yep.
All right, Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media. The footnotes for each episode can be found on our website. Plus, check it out for the different ways that you can support the show. You can also join us on Patreon, where we have hundreds of hours of bonus content. You can also support us by supporting our sponsors, or by giving us a 5-star review.
5 stars only, please.
Also, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Now, this is a weekly podcast, and episodes drop on Thursdays. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.